Hey guys, welcome to Terrifying Tales. In this video we are going to represent you a story about the winter traveling. This was a very big day for Haru Onda. He had been working up the nerve to do this for months. There was always a part of him that kept him from doing so, but enough was finally enough. Today was the day Haru was visiting his lawyer and filling out the necessary paperwork to file for the divorce he so desperately desired. Haru believed he deserved far better than Miyuki. He worked tirelessly to provide for her, while all she did was lie around the house. The two had been drifting apart for some time now, and only barely could he stomach his wife's presence. Haru knew he was in the prime of his life and would have no problem starting over with another woman, a better woman, one who would be grateful to have such a wonderful man. The excitement Haru had been feeling was quickly washed away, however, when he arrived at his lawyer's office. A most disheartening scene was playing out before his very eyes. Haru watched as his wife, Miyuki, entered their lawyer's office. The size of the smile on her face created a jabbing pain in the pit of Haru's stomach. Haru did his best to contain his rage on the drive home. The day had already turned out to be a bad one, and he didn't need to add to it by getting into an accident. And to make matters worse, he had to make a call to the other woman in his life and break the bad news. "You were right," said Haru. "I shouldn't have waited so long. She went to see our lawyer behind my back. Who does that bitch think she is? You need to calm down," said the woman on the other end. "There are always other ways to get what you want. You don't understand," said Haru. "She's going to take everything. I worked my whole life for what I have and she's just going to take it all away from me." The anger that had just been so prevalent quickly turned to sorrow. "I just want to be with you. You're the only thing that makes me happy. Even without my money, we can still be together. We need that money," said the woman. "If we want to start a life together, we're going to need money. Do you understand me?" "My lawyer, he never loses," said Haru. "Once he gets started, he doesn't stop until he's won. That's why I needed to get to him first, so he would be on my side. Now that lazy dog has him on hers. I won't stand a chance against her now. It sounds like you have no other choice now," said the woman. "What do you mean?" asked Haru. "You know exactly what I mean. You have to kill your wife." "What?" asked Haru, who was sure he had heard his mistress correctly, but he had to make sure he had actually heard that word come out of her mouth. "I said you have to kill her. The only way you're going to keep your money is if she's gone. It's too late to go through the proper channels now. You waited too long, so now we have no other choice. In all honesty, this is the plan I wanted to go with all along. I just didn't think you'd have the stomach to go through with it. But now your back's up against the wall. This really is the only option that we have left, Haru." "I can't do that," said Haru. "Why not?" asked the woman. "You're always telling me how much you hate her, and how things would be better if she just disappeared. But what if I'm caught?" asked Haru. "I'll hang for sure. Not if people don't know that she's dead," said the woman. "If there's no body, then there's no crime. Take her out to the woods, deep into the woods. Do it there. If they ever do find her body, the animals will have picked it clean. You can just tell the police that she went out on her own and never came back." "I don't know if I can do that," said Haru. "You love me, don't you?" "Of course I do." "You want to be with me, don't you?" "I do," replied Haru. "Then do this for me. It's the only way. She deserves it. She's always making you feel like a fool. Once it's over, we can be together. All you have to do is kill her." Bright and early the next day, and with nary more than his explanation that an impromptu excursion to the forest would be a fun experience, Haru ushered Miyuki into their car and the two were on their way. The majority of the car ride was done in complete silence. Miyuki had begun the trip by making several attempts to find an answer as to why the two were going to the forest in the dead of winter, but with no real answers given each time the question was asked. Miyuki eventually gave up her quest to find what the reason behind the trip was. Haru was disturbingly focused as he navigated his way out of the city and through the winding forest roads. It wouldn't take an expert to tell that something was pressing so very persistently upon his mind. The silence was abruptly broken when Haru made a request of his wife. "Miyuki-chan," he said, "reach into the glove box and get me my lighter. I need a cigarette." Miyuki opened the glove box and, after rummaging through a stack of brochures and magazines, was presented with a pack of cigarettes and a lighter. "What is this?" she asked. "I thought you—" "I did," replied Haru, who was now acting very nervous. "But I need one. It'll help me calm my nerves." Miyuki proceeded to stuff the cigarettes and lighter into her pocket. "What are you doing?" asked Haru. "I don't know why you need to calm your nerves," said Miyuki. "We're just going on a day trip. Besides, you should thank me. I just saved your life." "I'll just get them later," said Haru under his breath. "What was that?" asked Miyuki. "Nothing. Any more secrets you keeping from me?" asked Miyuki. Here's our turn, said Haru. Without any further warning, Haru took a sharp right and took the couple SUV off the paved road and onto a forest trail. What are you doing? Asked Miyuki, who was doing her best to keep from hitting her head on the ceiling as the SUV bounced violently on the narrow dirt road. I'm taking us to the hiking trail, replied Haru. But the resort is still another hour down the road, said Miyuki. This trail is better, said Haru. I want it to be just the two of us. The trails out here are more scenic, unspoiled by human hands and hidden away from prying eyes. Haru had said the prying eyes part under his breath, as not to arouse suspicion. Okay, I just hope we don't get attacked by a wild animal or something. Then you won't be so eager to be away from prying eyes, said Miyuki, showing that she had most definitely heard the prying eyes remark. After quite the lengthy and bumpy ride, Haru brought the SUV to a stop in a clearing and the two continued with their journey on foot. The snow was deep, making it difficult to move very quickly. Miyuki was doing well considering the circumstances, but Haru was having trouble keeping up. You have to wait for me, panted Haru. You're so slow, said Miyuki, who had a substantial lead on her husband. If you were so eager to take a hike out here, shouldn't you be leading us? It's nothing. I just have to catch my breath. Miyuki seemed to have not heard what Haru had said as she was gazing at the majestic trees around her. They towered above the trees found in the city. I have to admit it, said Miyuki. I've never been somewhere this peaceful before. It's so quiet. I could scream at the top of my lungs and no one would hear me. Haru was lurched over, attempting to catch his breath. Miyuki reached into one of her jacket pockets. Here, take one of these pills, she said as she unscrewed the cap. It'll make you feel better. No, replied Haru. I'm just not used to this elevation. My body will adjust. And with that, Haru continued on his way. Miyuki put the pills away and did the same. Further into their excursion, Miyuki had to come to another abrupt stop due to Haru once again falling too far behind. We should head back to the car now, said Miyuki. I don't think you're going to last much longer out here. And neither will you, Haru said under his breath. Huh, what was that? Asked Miyuki. Nothing, replied Haru. Could you face away from me for a minute? What? Why? I have to take a leak. Miyuki was clearly disgusted by what Haru had just told her. How vulgar, she said. I don't want to see that. That's why I asked you to turn around, said Haru, making his way to a nearby tree. He then began struggling with his belt. Fine, replied Miyuki before honoring Haru's request and turning around. It's not like I haven't seen that before, she said to herself. So what did you do yesterday? Asked Haru. Are you really trying to have a conversation with me while you do that? Asked Miyuki. I think you should focus on one thing at a time. It helps me go, said Haru, reaching into his pants to retrieve a large knife. Miyuki rolled her eyes at such a notion. Not much, she said. I just met a friend in the city and we spent some time together, that's all. What did you do? We just talked, replied Miyuki. Why do you care so much about what I did yesterday? You never asked me about how my day went. Miyuki then began walking away but tripped and stumbled over something buried in the snow. Miyuki picked up what turned out to be a rock the size of a baseball. I should throw this at him for asking me so many questions, she whispered with a smile. Maybe that would make him stop. What did you talk about? Asked Haru, advancing toward his wife. I don't remember, replied Miyuki. Look, it's getting colder out here. We should head back. Are you done yet? She then spun around to discover Haru now standing only feet away, brandishing his knife. What is this? Asked Miyuki, a half-hearted smile on her face. That's not funny. Put that thing away before you hurt yourself. Who was this friend you met yesterday? Asked Haru, making his way closer, prompting Miyuki to timidly back away. Just someone I went to school with, replied Miyuki. Are you going to put the knife away or not? You're starting to scare me. A friend from school? Are you sure you weren't with Mr. Tanaka? Our lawyer? Of course not. The tone of Miyuki's voice showed how nervous she was, and it was clear that it wasn't the knife that was making her feel this way. I was in the city yesterday, said Haru, coming to a stop. Miyuki did the same. I know why you went to see him. I know. You do? Asked a wide-eyed Miyuki. You're planning on leaving me, aren't you, and taking all of my money? No, that's not it, replied Miyuki, feverishly shaking her head. Then what were you doing there? Miyuki's mouth opened, but no words could escape. That's what I thought, said Haru again, advancing. Miyuki began backing away again. Think about what you're doing. If only I had gotten to Tanaka first, said Haru. Then all this could have been avoided. He would have made sure you got nothing. But it's too late for that now. You got him on your side, and I'm going to lose everything. But I won't let that happen. Having no experience in doing such a thing, Haru kept backing Miyuki away. Had he been better suited for murder, Haru surely would have struck by now. Miyuki slammed the rock against Haru's face, sending him falling to the ground. A steady flow of blood began running from his wound and onto the pristine white snow. Are you dead? Miyuki asked timidly. Haru began to groan and attempted to get up. This was enough to prompt Miyuki to flee further into the forest. On shaky legs, Haru got back to his feet. When he touched the wound on his head, he grew extremely angry. Though Haru was in no shape to do so with his head in so much pain, he immediately began his pursuit. After Haru and Miyuki had left the area, the blood that had been spilled was absorbed by the snow, leaving behind no trace that it had ever been there. Miyuki had run until she could run no more. She looked back in the direction from which she had just come and found no sign of Haru. Feeling somewhat relieved, she rested against a tree and caught her breath. "Why is this happening to me?" she asked. Retrieving her phone from her pocket, Miyuki raised it high and attempted to get a signal. Unfortunately, she was at far too great a distance from civilization to find one. Unbeknownst to Miyuki, a thick sheet of ice had formed on the other side of the tree and was now growing upward at an alarming rate. A rustling somewhere within the woods startled Miyuki so badly that she practically jumped away from the tree. This prompted the ice to slowly recede. "Haru-chan, is that you?" she asked nervously. "Did you come to tell me that the joke is over?" More rustling forced Miyuki to back away timidly. "Haru-chan?" When the rustling got too close for comfort, Miyuki stopped asking questions and began a hasty retreat. Shortly after Miyuki's escape, a fox that had given her quite the scare emerged from its hiding place. Immediately thereafter, an unknown presence shot out from behind a tree and was upon the fox with frightening quickness. Haru was far from being as fleet of foot as Miyuki, and was a sizable distance behind. The fact that his head was in extreme pain from his wife's rock attack also put him at a distinct disadvantage. "Miyuki-chan," he shouted. "Come back, I promise I won't hurt you, let's forget about this and go home." When he received no response, he grew angry. "Bitch, you had better hope I never find you, look at what you did to me." After taking some time to calm down, Haru called out to Miyuki again. "What makes you think you can get away?" he shouted. "I'm following your footprints, there's nowhere you can hide where I can't find you." There was dead silence after the shouting. So quiet was it that Haru could hear clearly approaching footsteps from behind. When they had come too close for his comfort, Haru spun around, knife ready to strike. There was no one there. With no impending danger to deal with, Haru turned back around to continue his pursuit, but a most unsettling scene was awaiting him. The footprints that he had been following had all been wiped out and covered with fresh snow. Miyuki lost her footing while she was running and fell to the ground. The back of her throat burned from the cold air she had been inhaling, making it difficult for her to breathe. "I can't take this anymore," sobbed Miyuki, tears filling her eyes. A sudden chilling wind swept across Miyuki's face like a gentle caress. Lifting her head, Miyuki found something in the distance. It was difficult to tell from so far away, but it looked as if someone had built a snowman in a clearing. Miyuki got back to her feet and immediately made her way toward it. The air almost seemed to be getting colder as Miyuki entered the clearing, and as she grew nearer to the snowman, she could see that it was made crudely out of 3 large balls of snow with twigs for arms. Unlike most snowmen, it had no face. Miyuki laid her hand upon the snowman. "Who made this?" she wondered. "Hello," she called out. "Is there anyone here? I need help." Something compelled Miyuki to walk around to the other side of the snowman. Her eyes bulged and her breathing immediately stopped when she found what was waiting for her on the other side. The snowman had been hollowed out, and inside was a dead fox that had been torn to shreds. Fresh blood nearly completely covered the entire half of the snowman. Miyuki screamed at the top of her lungs before fleeing. Snow had begun to fall, and the temperature had decreased significantly. Haru had come to the conclusion that Miyuki would most likely succumb to the elements, which meant priority number 1 was to save himself before the bitter cold took him as well. "Which way did we come from?" asked Haru, looking frantically around in hopes of seeing something that would spark his memory. Haru retrieved his keys from his pocket and began pushing buttons frantically, hoping it would alert him to the whereabouts of his car. But from such a distance, it would be impossible to get a signal, let alone hear the horn. "Where the hell is the car?" The chilling wind seemed to be blowing at its most ferocious near Haru. So powerful were the gusts that he had to duck behind a tree for protection. "I need to get out of here," said Haru, trembling badly. "That damn weather girl said it was going to be a nice day today. She didn't say there was going to be a blizzard. I'm going to sue everyone at that network when I get home." He then chuckled. "I'll have to enlist the help of Mr. Tanaka. I'm sure he won't be busy, seeing as Miyuki doesn't need his help anymore." What Haru didn't know was that razor-sharp icicles were hanging perilously from the branches of near every tree in the surrounding area. "I can't wait here all day," said Haru. "I'll turn to ice before this storm goes away. I have to get to higher ground. I'll be able to see everything from there." The instant Haru stepped away from the tree, an icicle fell from a branch and landed right behind him. A startled Haru turned to discover the projectile the size of a large kitchen knife jutting out of the snow staring up at him. "That was close," he said before letting out a nervous chuckle. It wasn't so much the fact that an icicle had nearly struck him that prompted the out-of-place laugh, it was the ferocity with which it had fallen. He was no scientist, but Haru knew things shouldn't fall from that short of a distance with that much velocity. Another icicle fell from a branch and whizzed by Haru's face, landing at his feet. There was no chuckle this time. Haru was genuinely frightened by the near miss. Looking up, Haru was horrified to find hundreds of razor-sharp icicles. Thinking that his footsteps might have something to do with whether or not they fell, Haru began walking away as carefully as he could. This did nothing to stop them, however, as numerous icicles began breaking off their branches and plummeting to the ground. Only narrowly was Haru able to avoid them. Wanting nothing more than to escape the danger, Haru began running as best as he could through the piled snow, but his escape plan almost seemed to be making the icicles begin falling with even more force than before. Seeing a clearing ahead, Haru was hopeful he would make it to safety without incurring any injuries. But one icicle succeeded in finding its target. It drove itself deep into his shoulder, sending Haru crashing to the ground and screaming in pain. Another icicle then stabbed him in one of his legs, making his escape even more difficult. As Haru crawled towards safety, an icicle pierced the ground only inches from his face, stopping him dead in his tracks. As suddenly as the icicles had begun falling, they stopped. But Haru was far from out of danger, as the sound of approaching footsteps caught his attention. His eyes bulged to nearly twice their normal size when he got his first glimpse of the newcomer, though she had been near exhaustion before. Seeing the horrific snowman gave Miyuki more than enough incentive to continue running. She made sure to take brief glances back to make sure whoever had left the snowman was not in pursuit. "I don't want to die out here," whimpered Miyuki, tears welling up in her eyes. "Please don't let me die." When Miyuki depleted her newfound energy, she fell to her knees. "Miyuki," whispered an almost angelic voice. Hearing her name prompted Miyuki to quickly get back to her feet and begin looking for the source of the voice. In the distance, through a steady snowfall, Miyuki could make out a figure. "Hello?" she called out. "Can you help me?" The wind grew stronger, filling the air with more snow and making it far more difficult to see. Before Miyuki knew it, the figure in the distance had disappeared. Was that real? Miyuki wondered. Or am I already dead? A hand came to a rest on Miyuki's shoulder, causing her to immediately stiffen up. "Don't be afraid, Miyuki," said a woman's voice. "That is your name, isn't it? It's a very pretty name. That's what that man called you. Is he your husband? He doesn't seem very nice." Miyuki mustered the courage to turn around, but found no one. "I think he wants to hurt you," said the voice. "But I hurt him. I made him bleed. I made him scream. It was wonderful." "Is he dead?" asked Miyuki, who was far too frightened to flee. "I let him live. After all, I can't have fun without my playmates. Oh, it's been so long since I've heard someone scream. But hearing it only made me want more. I want to hear you scream, Miyuki. Will you please scream for me?" "The snowman?" asked Miyuki. The woman let out a chuckle. "That was me," she said. "But that scream doesn't count. I want to hear you scream when you're in pain. Those are the best screams." "Why are you doing this?" asked Miyuki. "Because you sullied my pristine white with your tainted crimson," said the woman, who now sounded angry. "You spilled innocent blood on my beautiful snow. You made a mockery of the purest of pures." Miyuki slowly turned around and came face to face with a most horrific sight. A woman dressed in radiant white was standing mere feet away. Her hair was as white as the snow, and her skin was a pale blue. But the most startling thing about the woman was her eyes, which were a stunning dark blue. Terrified, Miyuki began backing away. The woman then let Miyuki know what the punishment was for corrupting her snow. "For what you two have done to my beautiful snow, you will die." Despite her body being depleted of energy, Miyuki was fleeing from danger as best as she could. She surely would have had no chance to escape from such a foe had not the mysterious woman allowed her to do so. Miyuki could think of nothing but the unsettling conversation she had had with the woman as she trudged slowly through the snow. "What are you?" Miyuki asked timidly. "I don't really know," replied the woman. "Does it really matter? It's not going to change what's going to happen to you." "Do you have a name?" "My name is Natsuko," replied the woman. "Natsuko?" asked a perplexed Miyuki. A grin formed on Natsuko's dark blue lips. "It seems God has quite the sense of humor, doesn't he? I never really liked the cold. I always liked it better when it was warm, but look at me now. I suppose it can't be helped, can it?" Natsuko then made a move toward Miyuki, prompting the frightened woman to continue asking questions to postpone the inevitable. "How did you become like this?" asked Miyuki. The grin quickly faded from Natsuko's lips. "They did this to me," she replied. "They turned me into the monster that you see before you." 500 years ago, Natsuko lived a simple life in her remote village of mostly farmers and fishermen. She was a very quiet woman and liked to keep to herself. The other villagers thought there was something odd about her and were always gossiping about her behind her back. It was harmless gossip for the most part, but one day the gossip became quite harmful. The growing season had been a very poor one, putting everyone on edge for the coming winter. And to make matters worse, many of the animals that were going to be used for food had gone missing. Fingers were immediately pointed at Natsuko. One particularly nasty rumor that was going around was that Natsuko was practicing witchcraft. Many people had reported seeing her many a night entering the forest under the cover of darkness to do only God knows what. The villagers were never all that friendly to Natsuko in the first place, but they took it to a new level when they began to shun her. Rarely would anyone even look at her as she walked by them. The children, however, weren't as well versed in the art of shunning. They would harass Natsuko by calling her witch, and some would throw rocks at her and her home. The villagers grew irate when one of their homes mysteriously burned to the ground. All the blame was directed squarely at Natsuko, who vehemently denied having had anything to do with what had happened. That anger only intensified when a man from the village reported finding several animal carcasses deep in the woods. Natsuko once again became the focus of the wrath of the villagers, who believed the animals had been used as sacrifices in some kind of demonic ceremony. And it was that same witchcraft that had led to the final straw was by far the most heinous of all acts that could have been committed. Several of the children in the village had gone missing, and after a few days of tireless searching, the children were discovered to have been drowned in a lake. No trial was needed in this village. They had no time to ask permission to carry out justice, as they were several days away from the nearest village that had any kind of law enforcement. They had determined Natsuko was guilty, and the only punishment worthy of such a heinous crime was death, to be administered immediately. So on a most bitterly cold winter day, a group of men kicked down Natsuko's door and took her kicking and screaming from her home. Natsuko's pleas would fall upon deaf ears as she was carried out of the village and deep into the forest. "Please stop," screamed Natsuko. "I haven't done anything. Your crimes were intended to destroy our village," exclaimed Elder Matsumoto, who was leading the group. "So your punishment is to suffer just as much as you have made the village suffer." Two of the men forced Natsuko against a large tree while two others tied her to it with several ropes. As tightly as they had tied her up, it was assured that Natsuko would never be able to break free from the makeshift prison. Natsuko screamed at the top of her lungs and did everything she could to free herself, but it was all in vain. Even if her voice could carry to the village, no one was going to help her. "Please don't leave me here," pleaded Natsuko. "Don't leave me here to die. Evil has made your heart grow cold," said Matsumoto. "This is a most fitting end for you, wouldn't you say?" Natsuko stopped struggling, and her demeanor grew dark. "Have you any last words? For this, your punishment will be far worse than mine. You have no idea just what you've done to yourself and to those who've conspired against me." Matsumoto motioned for the others to join him in departing. Natsuko let out a horrendous scream as the group left her to die. "They sentenced an innocent person to die that day," said Natsuko. Her demeanor became quite jovial. "And today 2 guilty people have been sentenced to die. It won't correct the mistakes of the past, but it's a good start." "You think my husband and I deserve to die?" asked Miyuki. "Of course you do. Look at why you're out here in the first place. I heard everything he said to you. He brought you out here so he could kill you. Then he's the guilty one, not me. So are you saying I should kill him and let you live?" Miyuki trailed off, not quite knowing how to answer the question. "You're both guilty of something," replied Natsuko. "Everyone is guilty of something. You think your wretched species is worthy of salvation. You all harbor animosity in your hearts for others and take pleasure only in the suffering of those you don't even know. Why should I stop with the 2 of you?" "What do you mean?" asked Miyuki. "Once I'm finished with you and your husband, I'm going to cleanse this world. I'm going to cover it in pure white. Not a single one of you will be left standing. You want to hurt others and make them suffer, then this will be your kind's punishment. I should have done this a long time ago. To think that I gave your kind a second chance." "You can't," gasped Miyuki. Natsuko began laughing. "Then find a way to stop me," she said. "Be the savior to this undeserving world. Allow it to continue rotting from the inside out." She then motioned for Miyuki to take her leave. "Go ahead, leave. I won't chase you. But know that I will find you eventually, and I will kill you, and I'll kill your conniving husband as well. And when I'm finished, the rest of this world is going to die." Snowballs that were far more solid than normal snowballs were whizzing past Haru as he ran as best he could on a bad leg through the forest. Those that struck trees after missing him ripped bark off or left visible gashes in the wood. "Crazy bitch," exclaimed Haru. Leave me alone. So concerned was he with dodging the deadly projectiles that Haru failed to notice that he was nearing a steep slope. He hit the slope at full stride and tumbled down head over heels on his dizzying descent to the bottom. Haru escaped the fall relatively unscathed, but it made him extremely angry. "You want to mess with me?" exclaimed Haru, pulling out his knife. "Show yourself." The only response was silence. "Not so tough now, are you? Don't mess with a man. You may be a monster, but you're still just a woman. Is that so?" asked Natsuko, who was nowhere to be found. A heavy fog began to roll in, making it impossible to see anything more than a few feet away. This prompted Haru to take to a readied stance. "You bitch," he touted. "This isn't fair." "How would fighting you face to face be fair?" asked Natsuko, hidden somewhere within the smothering fog. "You said I was just a woman. So what chance would I have against a strong man? I've got no other choice." "Keep talking," whispered Haru, treading carefully forward. "I'll follow the sound of your voice and then cut you to pieces when you're done cutting me to pieces," said Natsuko, showing that she had heard Haru's less than silent whisper. "Are you going to do the same thing to your wife, or are you going to use a more cruel method to kill her?" "I don't have to explain myself to you," exclaimed Haru. From out of nowhere, Natsuko pushed Haru from behind with nearly enough force to knock him to the ground. Haru immediately spun around and began swinging his knife wildly, but was unable to strike his target. "You're going to have to do better than that," said Natsuko. Haru again began taking careful steps forward. "She's close," he whispered. "I can feel it." He then took another wild swing but again failed to strike his target. "You're not very good at this, are you?" asked Natsuko. "How are you ever going to kill your wife if you can't even put a scratch on me?" Natsuko then pushed Haru from behind again. This time, however, she had pushed him with much more force than the first time, sending Haru crashing to the ground. Haru quickly got back to his feet and spun around, swinging his knife wildly. "You bitch," he shouted. "Who do you think you are? I've got you," said Natsuko. "What?" asked Haru. Natsuko again pushed Haru with enough force to take him off his feet. But when he hit the ground this time, Haru began sliding. The fog slowly began to dissipate to reveal Natsuko, who was standing on solid ground. Haru, however, was lying on his back upon a frozen lake. When he stood up, small cracks began forming in the ice around him. A blinding fog engulfed Natsuko. "I'd rather kill you myself," she said. "So try not to die." When the wind blew the fog away, Natsuko was nowhere to be found. Haru took a timid step forward, and when he did, more cracks began forming in the ice. Believing it would give him his best chance at survival, Haru got down on his hands and knees and began crawling towards safety. The ice cracked a little more with every careful inch of ground he covered. But Haru eventually made it back to the safety of solid ground. Miyuki couldn't believe her eyes. She was so weak that she thought maybe what she was seeing in the distance was her mind playing tricks on her. But marching onward, the village before her became more real than mere vision. Time had badly worn away the buildings. Many had collapsed while others looked to be on the verge of doing the same. One home, however, seemed to have stood the test of time. It stood out for that reason, but also because its windows and door had been boarded up. With the weather beginning to take a turn for the worst, Miyuki felt she had no other choice but to seek shelter inside. Fortunately, the boards and nails were weak enough for Miyuki to pry them from the door, making it no problem for her to gain entrance. Using her cell phone for light, Miyuki found the home looked to have been left untouched since it was last inhabited. Dust covered everything, but other than that, the home looked just as it had looked several hundred years ago. Looking through some of the items in the home, Miyuki deduced that the home had once belonged to a woman. She was validated in her assumption when she discovered a journal lying in plain view with a familiar name written in it. "Natsuko," gasped Miyuki, after flipping open the journal and finding the woman's name on the first page. This was her home. Miyuki had no real feelings about the home, but after realizing that it had once belonged to Natsuko, it became a sad and lonely place. The small bed, the table with only one chair and the scant amount of dishes now took on a new significance. With great curiosity, Miyuki began reading. The first pages that piqued Miyuki's interest were those that concerned catching the eye of a neighbor named Kato. But the further Miyuki would read, the more enlightening the content would become. I caught Kato looking at me again. I'm too shy to look back. What can I do? He's so handsome, and I'm so plain looking. And he's a married man, he has a child. But I don't care about those things. I can't fight these feelings I have for him. I just want to be with him no matter what the cost. I know that others have seen Kato looking at me. I know they don't like it, especially the women. I see them whisper to each other every time I walk by. They're spreading rumors about me. I don't care what they say about me. I just don't want them talking badly about Kato. He doesn't deserve it. I just worry about what kind of rumors these women are spreading about me. I hope they aren't saying things that will get me into trouble. After flipping through a few more pages, Miyuki found that the infatuation eventually became an all-out romance. Kaito and I have been meeting in the woods at night. It's the only way we can see each other without being discovered. But it's dangerous to go out at night since it sounds like there are wild animals running around. I think they're the ones responsible for the missing animals from our village, but I'm not afraid. As long as I have Kaito by my side, then I know nothing will ever happen to me. One particular journal entry helped to shed light on one mystery. Everyone knows that old man Yuta drinks too much. He spends half the day drinking and the other half falling down around the village. Everyone tells him to drink less, but he doesn't listen to them. I think he drinks even more when people tell him things like that, just to show them that they can't tell him what to do. The old man was drunker than I've ever seen him. He had a bundle of firewood with him as he stumbled home. He kept having to pick up his wood because he dropped it every few steps. I worried that something bad might happen. But I couldn't tell old man Yuta to be careful. He just would have yelled at me like he did with everyone. Later that night, his house burned down. As Miyuki read even further, she realized that more villagers eventually learned of the affair, and it did not sit well with them. But no one dared to tell Hinata, Kaito's now pregnant wife, for fear of what it would do to her. We were as careful as we could be. But I suppose in a village as small as ours, all secrets come out eventually. First it was just a few people here and there, then more people learned about me and Kaito. People tried to keep it from Hinata, but she eventually found out as well. Kaito said his wife wasn't angry or sad. I don't think it's normal to have no reaction to learning about something like this. All she did was tell Kaito to stop seeing me, and so he did. I was lonely, but I understood that a wife needs her husband and a child needs their father, so I stayed away from Kaito for the sake of his family. Miyuki continued reading, finding nothing of any real significance, until she came to a passage that would leave her breathless. I think there's something wrong with Hinata. She walks around the village like she's dead. She doesn't say anything to anyone and she doesn't even look at people. She just stares straight ahead. I know it has something to do with me and Kaito. In her current state, I fear she might do something she might regret. I was out by the lake when it happened. A group of children was playing when Hinata showed up. I was too far away to hear what she told them, but she gave them something to eat. The children all fell down after eating what Hinata had given them. She then tossed the children into the lake. It all happened so fast that there was no way I could have stopped it. What can I do? People won't believe me if I tell them what happened to those children. Their hatred for me is so strong that they might even blame me. If I keep quiet, maybe they'll think that it was just an accident, that the children were playing too close to the lake and fell in and didn't know how to swim. I just hope God can forgive me for not doing something. Tears began to form in Miyuki's eyes. She was innocent, she said. The door suddenly flew open, giving Miyuki quite the startle. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw Haru standing in the doorway. Seeing Haru left Miyuki temporarily unable to move. Haru made no hesitation before rushing to his wife. "Miyuki-chan," he exclaimed before surprisingly embracing her tightly. Haru pulled away from Miyuki to look her over. "You're not hurt, are you?" "No," replied a wide-eyed Miyuki. "I can't believe I found you." Haru embraced his wife again. "I'm sorry for what I did to you," he sobbed. "I don't know what came over me." "It's okay," said Miyuki, her voice trembling. When Haru released his wife, his injuries became visible. "What happened to you?" asked Miyuki. "Are you okay?" "That woman," exclaimed Haru. "She did this to me." Haru then began searching the house. "Have you searched for any weapons? We need to find something to defend ourselves with. Anything sharp or heavy, anything." "You've met her too?" asked Miyuki. "Yes, she's crazy." "Why does she want to kill us? What did we ever do to her?" As Haru continued to look for weapons, Miyuki pulled out the pain pills she had tried to give him earlier that day. But after a short time she put them back in her pocket. "Why is she doing this?" asked Haru. "Because she's angry," replied Miyuki. "Angry about what? She didn't do it," explained Miyuki. "Do what?" asked Haru. "Those things the villagers accused her of. They thought she was a witch, but she wasn't. She was just a lonely woman who wanted to feel loved." "What are you talking about?" Miyuki showed Haru Natsuko's journal. "It's all in here," she said. "Bad things started to happen in the village, and they thought it was Natsuko, but it wasn't. They sentenced her to die, and now she wants to punish us because of it." "I don't care about any of that," said Haru. "She wants to kill us, that's all I care about. Who cares what the reason is?" Haru was growing increasingly frustrated, as there was nothing he could use as a weapon to be found. "There's nothing here we can use," he exclaimed. "There's a bad storm outside. I don't know if we should make a run for it or not. If that woman finds us here, then we won't have a choice but to fight her." "She wants to punish everyone," said Miyuki. "And it's all our fault. What are you going on about?" asked Haru. "We shouldn't fight her. She's not evil." "What?" asked Haru. She's the most evil thing I've ever seen. We need to find a way to fix this, said Miyuki. If we can correct the mistake from the past, maybe it will appease her anger, and she can rest in peace. You watch too many movies, said Haru. We have only two options. We either fight or we run away, and since we don't have anything that can kill her, we'll run away. It won't be easy with that storm out there, but if we keep moving and don't stop, then we'll have a chance of getting out of this alive. What do you say? Reluctantly, Miyuki nodded in agreement with her husband. The two rushed out of the house to find a most peculiar sight. The snow that had been falling so swiftly was now paused in midair. She has to be close, said Haru. No time to waste. The two hurried out of the village and into the forest. It was mere moments after the pair had disappeared into the forest when Natsuko appeared in the village. With a wave of her hand, the snow suspended in midair began to gently fall. A grin was covering her face when Natsuko looked toward the forest. Maybe we can find something from her past out here, said Miyuki. She used to meet her lover in the forest. They might have left something behind that can help us. You're still going on about that? Asked Haru. We can't just keep running. Of course we can, replied Haru. The two eventually stopped in a clearing. This doesn't feel right, said Haru. What's wrong? Asked Miyuki. Look at this, said Natsuko, who was nowhere to be found. The happy couple has been reunited. Has your kind really become this forgiving? You were running for your life and you were trying so desperately to catch your prey. Yet now you stand side by side, ready to take on whatever challenge comes your way. We want to help you, shouted Miyuki. Be quiet, Miyuki, said Haru. You help me? Asked Natsuko. You must be joking. You're not a bad person, said Miyuki. What those people did to you was wrong. We want to right those wrongs. Tell us, how do we do that? You can't change what's already happened, said Natsuko. It's too late. A thick fog began rolling in, making it impossible to see anything. Get behind me, Miyuki, said Haru. Miyuki got behind Haru, and the two watched as fog began collecting in one particular spot. From the fog emerged Natsuko. You don't have to do this, said Miyuki. Yes, I do, replied Natsuko. Cold air began circulating around Natsuko's right hand. The cold air soon took on the form of a frighteningly beautiful sword made completely out of ice. Choose which one of you dies first, said Natsuko. Haru pulled out his knife and took to a readied stance. Natsuko took a swing at Haru, but he was able to dodge the attack. The pain from his injuries intensified with the sudden movement. Why are you trying to protect her? Asked Natsuko. Don't you want her dead? And you, she said to Miyuki. Why are you hiding behind him? Aren't you afraid of him? He wants to kill you even more than I do. The swings Natsuko was taking with her sword showed just how inept she was with a weapon. She was far less confident attacking her prey with a physical object as opposed to using the elements as her weapon of choice. What are you waiting for? Asked Haru. Shut up, shouted Natsuko, whose next swing succeeded in slashing Haru across the stomach. Haru screamed in pain, prompting Natsuko to begin laughing hysterically. Not so confident now, are you? Miyuki, holding Haru up, was the only thing keeping him from falling to— I don't want to finish you just yet, said Natsuko. I want you to suffer a slow, painful death, like the one I had to endure. Feel the life drain out of your body while the cold embrace of winter ferries you off to hell. Tell me what you want us to do, said Miyuki. How can we fix this? You can't fix this, replied Natsuko. I already told you. The only thing I want you two to do is die. I want you to pay for your wicked desires. After taking some time to fully appreciate what she had done to Haru, Natsuko made the couple a horrific offer. I don't have to kill both of you, said Natsuko. What are you saying? Asked Haru. I've chosen to show the mercy that your kind is so lacking, replied Natsuko. Choose which one of you dies and I'll let the other escape with their life. Take me, said Haru. No, exclaimed Miyuki. You can't. It's my fault we're in this mess in the first place, said Haru. If it wasn't for me, we'd be home safe right now. Let her take my life as punishment for what I've done. How noble, said Natsuko. Why should either of us have to die? Asked Miyuki. Because that's what I want, exclaimed Natsuko. Please, Miyuki-chan, there's no other way, said Haru. There has to be another way, Miyuki told Natsuko. If you don't choose, then I'll choose for you, said Natsuko. Please, give us time to decide, said Miyuki. Why should I? If we can't decide which one of us should die, then you can have us both. If you think that if I agree to this that you'll be able to escape, then you're wrong, said Natsuko. Wherever my snow covers the ground I have dominion. You could be miles away from me and I would still catch you in the blink of an eye. We know that, said Miyuki. So we have no way to escape. You have nothing to lose. We just need time to decide. Chasing you two has been rather enjoyable, said Natsuko. What have I got to lose by playing one last round? Very well. I'll give you more time, but not much. Make your decision. Because the next time our paths cross, someone is going to die. And with that, a heavy fog consumed Natsuko, and when it had dissipated, she had vanished from sight. We have to go, said Miyuki, urging Haru onward. Why didn't you leave me to die? Asked Haru. After what I did to you, because you're my husband, said Miyuki. Haru was clearly taken aback by what had just been said. Despite the horrible thing he had done to Miyuki, she was still going to stand by his side until the end. Now let's go, said Miyuki. There's no hope, said Haru, who was having even more difficulty keeping up with his wife due to his mounting injuries. We can't escape and there's nothing we can do to stop her. Just leave me here to die. Save yourself. I won't give up, said Miyuki. There's no more time, said Haru. She's going to show up any minute. Miyuki hadn't heard her husband as her attention was focused squarely on something else. It was hard to see from that distance, but Miyuki was sure she saw something up ahead. Without urging Haru to follow, Miyuki continued on her way. Wait for me, said Haru. Miyuki began tearing at a bush up against the side of a mountain. What are you doing? Asked Haru. After a while, Miyuki had cleared away enough of the bush to show that there was an entrance to a cave hiding behind it. Miyuki and Haru entered the cave and took out their cell phones, using them to light the way as they ventured further inside. I don't think she'll find us in here, said Haru. The deeper the two explored, the colder the cave became. To make matters worse, as the two continued, they found strange symbols drawn in blood on the walls. What are these? Asked Haru. Miyuki-chan, we shouldn't be in here. Miyuki paid her husband no attention and continued leading the way. When the two came to a dead end, they found a makeshift home away from home. A pile of hay served as a bed with a tattered blanket and pillow that had been worn badly by time laid neatly on top of it. Natsuko, said Miyuki. There was a small table and chair off to the side, and on the table was a book. Miyuki wasted no time in retrieving it and reading. As she had been expecting, the handwriting matched what she had seen in the journal she had found in Natsuko's home. I found a book in a cave during one of my walks. It looked to be thousands of years old. The language, it was nothing I had ever seen before. But for some reason, I could read every word that was in it. It's like the book had been left there just for me. I've written my name in blood in the book just as it told me to. Now I am bound to the book, and it is bound to me. The book speaks of a master who has promised his followers power if they give him what he wants. I want this power, and I'll do whatever it takes to get it. I want to teach that village a lesson for mistreating me. They treat me like an outsider. Why? Because I don't take part in their stupid activities or engage them in conversation, just because I like to keep to myself. Why should that make them treat me like I'm different? What kind of book is that? Asked Haru. It's Natsuko's journal, replied Miyuki. But you already found her journal. I did, said Miyuki. She must have kept another one. I waited for the night of the full moon. When it was at its highest point in the sky, I spoke the incantation of the ancients. It wasn't long before I started seeing the results. Only 3 days later, the crops started to wilt and die. There won't be near enough food for these fools to eat during the coming winter. It serves them right that they'll all starve to death. People are starting to talk. I made a mistake. Some of the farmers saw the look on my face as they fretted over their precious crops. I was just so happy with what I had done that I had to get a better look. Now they know that I take pleasure in their misfortune. I'll have to be more careful as I continue to do my lord's bidding. This can't be, said Miyuki. There was genuine sorrow on her face as she read further the horrible acts committed by Natsuko. My master desires blood, and blood is what I have given my master. Under the cover of night, I led some of the animals into the forest. I cut them to pieces with an axe. Their screams made my body quiver with pleasure. The villagers are so stupid. They'll think that a wild animal did this to them. After all, what human being could do this? I don't feel any different. The master has yet to reward me for my devotion. I must give him more than the lives of mere plants and animals. I must take human life for him. I know he will show his favor to me if I give him that. Stupid old man Yuta, staggering around the village drunk. He bumped into me and then started yelling at me like it was my fault. Everyone just watched. They didn't try to help. I felt like a fool standing there letting that drunk yell at me like that. I promise I won't let him get away with what he's done. I snuck into that drunk fool's house. I could hear him snoring from outside, so I knew he wouldn't object to me being there. I set some old rags on fire, then ran back home to watch his house burn to the ground. I was heartbroken when he came stumbling out of his front door shouting that his house was on fire. The master will not be happy about this. Most of the villagers won't talk to me or even look at me. Not that I want them looking at me or talking to me. I hate them all so much. Some of the children have been calling me witch, and some even throw rocks at me. Those children won't live long enough to regret the way they treat me. Miyuki slammed the journal shut. I can't read anymore, said Miyuki. It was all lies, everything she told me. She wasn't a victim at all. She deserved what happened to her. She's a monster now because she was a monster then. Miyuki-chan, said Haru, who had discovered something under Natsuko's pillow. Haru displayed it in the light from his cell phone to reveal it was the book Natsuko had used to learn of the Dark Master and of the spells with which she would use to terrorize her village. "This is the book that turned her into what she is," said Miyuki. She opened the book to the first page and was presented with Natsuko's name written in blood. "This is all too much to handle," said Haru. "Do you still have my cigarettes? I need to calm myself down. This isn't the time for that. Please, it might be the last time I get to smoke one." A crackling sound began filling the cave. When Miyuki and Haru turned their lights to the sound, they found ice had begun forming on the walls. "We need to leave," said Miyuki. When the two exited the cave, they found Natsuko waiting for them. "I see you found my hiding spot," said Natsuko. "Did you find anything interesting to read while you were in there?" "You lied to me," said Miyuki. "I suppose I did," replied Natsuko. "The journal I found in your home, why did you write it? In hopes that one of those fools would sneak into my house and find it. Then maybe they would have cast their suspicions on someone else. But no one ever did. They thought that by entering the house of a witch they would be cursed. That's why they boarded it up after they murdered me. The only one naive enough to believe the stories in that book was you. So Kato, he was just some man from the village that wouldn't give me a second look," said Natsuko. "It's too bad. I would have let him lay with me." "So you were executed before getting the chance to punish your village for the way they treated you," said Miyuki. "Is this your way of making up for that failure?" "Oh, I didn't fail," replied Natsuko. 500 years ago, ... It had taken only hours for Natsuko to succumb to the elements. She had stopped struggling to free herself from the tree, knowing that death was inevitable. A gentle snow began to fall upon the peaceful scene. But the serene environment would take a dramatic turn for the worst very quickly. The sky grew dark, and a powerful wind turned a gentle snowfall into a hellish blizzard. A lifeless Natsuko opened her eyes. What once were brown, Natsuko's eyes were now a dark shade of blue. Her skin faded to a light blue, and her hair lost its color, becoming a white as pristine as snow. The ropes ensnaring Natsuko became covered in ice, weakening them to the point that they snapped and set free their prisoner. Natsuko removed herself from the tree, and immediately looked in the direction of her village. A swirling snow gave her elegant white garments. Natsuko's village was in a panic from the sudden blizzard. People who had been out and about were running back to their houses. "Get inside," shouted Matsumoto. "It isn't safe." So much snow had fallen in such a short time that the roof of a nearby home collapsed from the weight. "It isn't safe here," shouted another man. Before he could utter another word, a razor-sharp chunk of ice pierced through the back of his head and out his mouth. People began running out of their homes as more roofs began collapsing from the weight of the snow that had quickly built up on them. At the far end of the village, Natsuko was hovering several feet above the ground. She extended her arm toward the villagers, sending more razor-sharp chunks of ice at them. The ice found their targets with deadly precision. Natsuko floated through the village toward the man who had overseen her execution. "Did you really think death could stop me?" asked Natsuko. "It's you!" gasped Matsumoto. After lowering to the ground, cold air began circulating around Natsuko's hand, and from that cold air emerged a sword made of crystal-clear ice. "I'm going to spare you the speeches and ask you a very simple question," said Natsuko. "Have you any last words?" "Burn in hell," said Matsumoto. "Oh, I'm afraid that isn't possible," replied a grinning Natsuko. "For you see, hell is a very cold place." Natsuko then wasted no time in taking the man's head. With that piece of business taken care of, Natsuko rose high into the air. An unstoppable rush of snow came flooding into the village and buried everything. "Were you really going to let one of us live?" asked Miyuki. "I think you already know the answer to that," replied Natsuko. Haru pulled out his knife. "This is where we end this," said Natsuko. "The games are over. Once I'm finished here, I'm going to spread this bitter cold over the rest of your vile species." Natsuko summoned a powerful blizzard. "And just to make sure you don't get any foolish ideas about escaping," said Natsuko, before large razor-sharp chunks of ice thrust out of the ground and formed a semicircle around the three, leaving only the dead-end cave as escape. "So much innocent blood is going to stain my snow," said Natsuko. "Once the snow is wiped clean, nothing will remain of your kind but bitter memories." When Natsuko raised her hands, razor-sharp chunks of ice. Miyuki caught everyone by surprise by running back into the cave. "Leaving her beloved husband to fend for himself," said Natsuko. "It doesn't surprise me. But don't worry. She'll be getting hers soon enough. But first you get yours." Haru thrust his knife toward Natsuko in a vain attempt to intimidate her. "What's with all the theatrics?" he asked. "Afraid to fight me with your bare hands? Why should I get my hands dirty when I can let the cold take you? HMPH, just like a woman." "What did you say?" asked an enraged Natsuko. Miyuki returned to Natsuko's bed and retrieved the spellbook. As quickly as she could, she pulled out Haru's lighter and set the hay on fire. With the fire now raging, she placed both the spellbook and Natsuko's journal in the flames. Outside, Haru was continuing with his antagonizing speech. "It's a good thing you're not a man, or you would have finished the two of us off long ago," he said. "I guess we're lucky that you're just a woman." "Enough!" exclaimed Natsuko, who extended her arm toward Haru. The chunks of ice hovering in midair failed to attack their target. Instead, large cracks began appearing in them. Before long they shattered. The larger chunks of ice that surrounded the area began cracking as well before breaking into pieces. The powerful blizzard quickly died down to nothing more than a passing breeze. "Why is this happening?" whispered Natsuko. Miyuki emerged from the cave. "You!" exclaimed Natsuko. "What did you do?" "You said that after we're gone there won't be anything left of us but bitter memories," said Miyuki. "I made sure that when you're gone not even your memories are left behind." With the way water was streaming down Natsuko's face, it was evident that she had begun melting. "How could you do this to me?" asked a sorrowful Natsuko. There was no sympathy to be had, as Miyuki and Haru watched their nemesis melt away until nothing remained. Haru immediately fell to his knees. "Thank God," he said. "I don't know how much longer I could have kept putting on that act." Miyuki could see that her husband's stomach wound was bleeding badly. "I didn't know it was that bad," she said. "I did a good job of—" Miyuki reached into her pocket and produced the bottle of pills. "Here, take these," she said, pouring a few pills into her husband's hand. "Thank you," said Haru before popping them into his mouth. He then attempted to get back to his feet. "No, you have to stay still," said Miyuki, gently nudging him back down. "It's a long cut, but it isn't very deep. I think you'll be okay if you take it easy." "I feel better already thanks to you," Haru said with a smile. "I'm glad," replied Miyuki, a smile upon her face. "Where do we go from here?" asked Haru. "We've been given a second chance," replied Miyuki. "This is our opportunity to start our lives over. Where we go from here is wherever we choose to go." It was a struggle, but Haru was able to get back to his feet. "An opportunity to start our lives over," he said. It happened so quickly that Miyuki had no chance to react. After straightening himself up, Haru plunged his knife deep into his wife's stomach. Not only did it produce an extreme pain, it felt as if the air had been sucked out of Miyuki's lungs. "Why?" she gasped. "We never could have gone back to what we once were," explained Haru. "Not after what happened today. If I want to start a new life, I have to do it without you. I hope you can understand. I hope you can forgive me." Miyuki fell to the ground, her blood staining the snow a deep shade of red. "I had to get along with you," said Haru. "It was the only way I was going to survive all this. But now I have no more use for you." Miyuki began laughing. "What's so funny?" asked Haru. "I should have seen this coming," said Miyuki. "I suppose now neither of us is going to get the chance to start our new lives." "What do you mean?" Haru suddenly lurched over in pain, and blood immediately began pouring out of his mouth. "I was going to start my new life with Mr. Tanaka," said Miyuki. "But I guess that won't be happening now." "The pill," gasped Haru before falling to the ground. Miyuki again began laughing. "How long?" asked Haru. "How long have me and Mr. Tanaka been lovers?" asked Miyuki. "I'm not sure, but it's been a long time, much longer than you've been seeing that woman. Don't think I didn't know about her. I've known about her from the start. I just didn't care." It wasn't long before Haru succumbed to the poison. "Where do we go from here?" asked Miyuki, gazing at the blue sky above. "We can go wherever we choose to go." Her eyes then closed for the final time. A gentle snow began to fall. The blood that had been spilled upon the pristine snow was more than enough to wake Natsuko from her temporary slumber. Within Temptation Ice Queen. Thank you for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this telling story video, please do not forget to give us a like, comment, share and subscribe.